Tonight, the latest on the deadly attack in Syria that killed 4 Americans.
We will never forget their noble and immortal sacrifice.
As the U.S. begins to pull out and the war there rages on.
As president, my first duty is the defense of our country.
The president unveils a new strategy to defend the United States against hypersonic missiles and nuclear weapons. All this sends shots across the bow between the president and Speaker of the House as the government shutdown lurches through its 27th day. Four Americans killed and 3 more injured in a suicide blast in Syria. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder. Well, ISIS is claiming responsibility for the deadly explosion that killed at least 10 other people in the northern Syrian city of Manbij. Today at the Pentagon, President Trump called the Americans killed, quote, brave American heroes.
We're now actually able to begin to hand off the fight against ISIS in Syria to our coalition partners, and we are bringing our troops home. The caliphate has crumbled and ISIS has been defeated.
The latest killing comes days after the U.S. began removing equipment from the war zone and in the midst of a planned U.S. troop withdrawal from the country. Well, today the president announced a strategy for a new high-tech-based missile defense system.
We are committed to establishing a missile defense program that can shield every city in the United States, and we will never negotiate away our right to do this. The U.S. will now adjust its posture to also defend against any missile strikes, including cruise and hypersonic missiles. My upcoming budget will invest in a space-based missile defense layer. It's new technology. It's ultimately going to be a very, very big part of our defense and obviously of our offense.
The missile defense push comes as countries like Russia and China have heralded nuclear capable hypersonic missiles 10 times faster than the speed of sound. Russia says the missiles can hit targets 1,000 miles away. Well, the announcement comes as the U.S. seeks to shift resources from countering extremism in the Middle East to preparing for complex global power threats from countries like Russia, China, and North Korea and Iran.
The United States could lose a war with China or Russia. That according to a new report commissioned by Congress. This deep look at our national defense strategy finds U.S. military has potentially lost its edge when stacked up against global powers.
It's the most technologically advanced member of the Navy's fleet. As part of a growing defense budget, the USS Zumwalt is a stealth-capable guided missile destroyer with a price tag of some $4 billion.
The stronger we are, the less chance we have of having to go to war.
The president is touting the increase as the largest military budget in U.S. history, at least 4 times the size of China's defense budget and more than 10 times that of Russia. But a new report to Congress shows signs of an eroding military edge, warning the U.S. could lose a war against powers like China or Russia.
It's a real dire warning. This is a flashing red light.
John Hanna is the former Deputy National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney.
The United States risks real strategic insolvency and the danger that we could lose regional wars in critical theaters of operations.
Defense Secretary James Mattis said he was humbled by the largest defense budget in history. Now, it sounds like it might not be enough.
I hope we can avoid an arms race. The challenge we face right now is that the Army is as small as it's been since the Second World War. The Navy is, I think, on track to be smaller than it has been since the First World War. And the Air Force is the smallest it's ever been.
Eric Edelman is the co-chair of the National Defense Strategy Commission. The bipartisan report to Congress warns that available resources for every branch of the military are clearly insufficient if the U.S. were to fight a global power and deter other enemies simultaneously.
Our technology is far superior to anybody else. Our jet fighters, even our tankers, but our planes, our ships, there's nobody that makes the equipment like we make it.
But that equipment comes at a price. While rising global powers have invested heavily in new high-end capabilities, American interests have concentrated on a different kind of fight. As the U.S. military trained its fire on terrorism wrought by violent Muslim extremists in Iraq, Afghanistan, and now Syria for the last 15 years, China and Russia have been busy developing highly sophisticated military weapons, like this Russian hypersonic Kinzhal missile.
No missile defense system will be able to withstand it.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says it can carry nuclear warheads and hit targets over 1,000 miles away at speeds 10 times faster than the speed of sound.
Now we have new kinds of technologies coming online that are going to change things up a bit: hypersonics, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, things like that.
Another new report from the Government Accountability Office warns there are no existing countermeasures to defend against these hypersonic weapons. Experts say the American military needs to redirect.
China's military budget is likely to double by 2030 and certainly at least double again by mid-century. At that point, it would be larger than today's U.S. military budget.
Michael O'Hanlon from the Brookings Institution says if China's economy keeps growing, so will its military. And they're not the only problem.
Russia, first of all, is not going to overtake us, but they may have enough to be a big problem anyway. They've got 5,000 nuclear weapons, just like we do. They have conventional superiority in regions where we have allies we are sworn by treaty to defend. So they're big enough to be a problem. And even if their budget's only 1/10 of ours.
Despite Russia's relatively small defense budget, its nuclear arsenal remains a threat.
Nuclear deterrence is tricky because what matters is not what we think would deter somebody, but what they think.
Edelman, an American diplomat and former defense official, warns that both Russia and China are investing in new nuclear weapons and delivery platforms.
We've grown very complacent about this because since 1945 nobody has used nuclear weapons in anger, and so I think there's a tendency to think no one will ever do this.
With the exception of North Korea and Iran, no armed state is likely to launch a premeditated attack. The most imminent worry for experts we talk to is the cyber realm.
Cyber attack has the potential appeal of incapacitating us without killing anybody immediately or directly. If the electricity grid goes down, a lot of Americans will die.
Even if the U.S. were to retaliate, a country like Russia is less susceptible to cyber attacks.
Russia might decide that all we're going to do is cyber attack them back. It's one thing in the heat of the moment to punch back against somebody that just hit you. It's something else if it takes a year or two. So maybe Russia's theory of victory would be the Americans will lose heart if we can just slow them down.
Experts we talked to say there's huge uncertainty as to whose tools are better in the cyber realm. Even at a historic $716 billion, the U.S. still spends less on defense in terms of GDP than under Ronald Reagan. So if we want to keep our edge against Russia and prevent China from outspending us, the U.S. has to decide now whether to increase an already staggering military budget. John Jessup, CBN News, the Pentagon.
Well, the government shutdown is in its 27th day, and neither side is showing any signs of giving in. After the Speaker of the House sent a letter to the president urging him to delay the State of the Union, President Trump sent a letter to Nancy Pelosi postponing the Speaker's planned trips overseas. But as the tit-for-tat continues, there's little relief for the nearly 1 million federal workers furloughed or forced to work without pay. Today, the president made another push for the long-promised border wall in the middle of the shutdown.
We need strong borders. We need strong barriers and walls. Nothing else is going to work. The federal government remains shut down because congressional Democrats refuse to approve border security. we're going to have border security. While many Democrats in the House and Senate would like to make a deal, Speaker Pelosi will not let them negotiate. The party has been hijacked by the open borders fringe within the party, the radical left becoming the radical Democrats.
And the president used the announcement of the new missile defense initiative to make the case for border security at the Pentagon today. The Second Lady of the United States is returning to teach art in the classroom. This week, the announcement that Karen Pence would return to an elementary school in Northern Virginia was met with ire. Teachers at Emmanuel Christian School, where Pence spent 12 years teaching art, must sign a statement that marriage is, quote, the uniting of one woman and one man. Those anti-LGBTQ views stole headlines this week, and CNN, an op-ed, detailed the Pence's family, quote, astonishing moral hypocrisy. The Second Lady's office responded that, quote, it's absurd that Mrs. Pence's decision to teach art to children at a Christian school and the school's religious beliefs are under attack. And for more on that and to help us break it down, including the latest on the shutdown, we are joined by Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, what do you make of this whole situation with Karen Pence? She cannot catch a break, it doesn't seem.
No, she really can't. Look, she believes in the traditional view of marriage coming from the Bible. This just in, the Bible has been around for a while. I think you've heard of that. And she's going to teach at a school that promotes those values. So you have to wonder on just a straight up common sense standpoint, what's the problem with that? Look, the bottom line is, Jenna, that when it comes to discrimination, LGBT discrimination, there are federal anti-discrimination laws on the books, but when it comes to private Christian schools, there are none. So she can do that, and I know the liberals are up in arms about it, but look, it is what it is, and she's just holding through to her values and beliefs.
And when it comes to the shutdown, we're on day 27. David, this seems to be getting pretty petty between the president and the speaker.
It really is. I mean, look, they're giving kindergartners a bad name, I think, really, if you think about it, both sides. I mean, and you know, the White House is basically saying, look, if Nancy Pelosi had gone out of town, she would have had a hard time, obviously, negotiating a shutdown, being in Brussels or Afghanistan or wherever she was going to go. But I think what's interesting here is, look, the White House is also saying that first she was in Hawaii, then the Democrats went to Puerto Rico, now she's off to Brussels, and Donald Trump says, poor me, I'm all alone, I'm in the White House waiting for someone to come talk to me.
I'm all alone.
I'm all alone. No, I don't think you're all alone. But anyhow, the point is that this has really become crazy and childish at this point. I will say this, Jenna, chess and checkers. You know, Nancy Pelosi, I really believe, is playing checkers, which is straight up Donald Trump playing chess. Maybe not two moves ahead of her necessarily, but when you're unpredictable, that makes it very difficult for Nancy Pelosi to figure out what Donald Trump's going to do next.
David, can he actually prevent her from going overseas like this? I know he said she could, you know, fly commercial if she'd like to, but can he actually prevent her, keep her from going?
He can. He can. He can allow or prevent the military basically from blocking her and other congressional folks from going overseas. As a matter of fact, the White House now saying that all what they call CODELs, congressional delegation trips overseas, will be postponed until the government reopens. So we'll see.
Is it a given, David, that this shutdown will go on past January 29th when the State of the Union is supposed to happen? Well, do you think it'll drag on past then?
I think so. I really don't see any end in sight. I think the tipping point will be when the PR gets bad for, depends what side, Democrats or Republicans. Let's see how this plays out. But if Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer think that Donald Trump is going to roll over back to that chess and checkers game, they've picked the wrong guy to deal with. He is a New York street brawler who is determined to win the fight. Does it get childish at times? Yes. And oh, by the way, a quick little detail to point out about this trip today. Nancy Pelosi was supposed to leave for that trip overseas at 3 p.m. The White House press release on this came out at 2:15 in the afternoon. They told, apparently, according to my sources, they told Nancy Pelosi she wasn't going just a few hours before that. Wow. So just, you know, sorry, Nancy, don't pack the bags. Maybe JetBlue's available.
No, we'll unpack the bags. I'm sure.
I'm sorry, unpack the bags.
She was, I'm ready to go, I'm sure.
That's right.
She said the president could submit his State of the Union in a written statement. David, would it be unprecedented for a president to do this? Just a few seconds left. Has the president ever been uninvited to give the State of the Union?
Never uninvited, but it's not unusual for a president to submit a written State of the Union request. It's done. As a matter of fact, only 26 out of 45 presidents have actually, excuse me, let me rephrase that, 26 of 45 presidents have not given a State of the Union speech. So in other words, there have been plenty of times where presidents have given written responses, or excuse me, written State of the Union. Jimmy Carter last did it in 1981.
Yeah, I believe Woodrow Wilson was the first.
That is correct. You beat me on historical trivia.
All right, David, thank you very much.
Okay, Jenna.
And for more news on the partial government shutdown, check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast. You'll find more insights from David there, and he lays out who's really pulling the strings in the Speaker's office. Well, when we come back, we preview tomorrow's March for Life with the president of Focus on the Family. Find out what Jim Daly had to say about pro-life project that's close to his heart.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com to get your copy today.
Well, tomorrow is the 46th annual March for Life in Washington. Tens of thousands are expected to march on the National Mall in support of protecting the unborn. Every year, the march happens around the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, the 1973 case that legalized abortion in the United States. Since then, an estimated 60 million babies have been aborted. The march includes a weekend of activities, including the Rose Dinner, where Vice President Pence will give an address. Back in 2017, he made history when he addressed the March for Life just 1 week after the inauguration. And last year, President Trump also spoke via satellite. This year, the weather could be a challenge for the march on the Mall as snow is forecasted for the weekend. One voice leading the pro-life cause is Focus on the Family. Earlier, I sat down with President Jim Daly to talk about the importance of the March for Life and a pro-life project close to his heart. All right, well, Jim, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to Washington.
It's great to be here.
You know, this issue of life, obviously very important to Focus on the Family, one of the leading voices in this battle. Why is it important for all of you to be here for this March for Life?
Well, I think that's solidarity to say we are standing for the preborn child, to say that that is a human being made in the image of God. And I think for tens of thousands of people to come to Washington and say we agree with this makes a statement to the culture that they are not forgotten. And I so appreciate the momentum right now. I think, you know, technology has really helped to prove that the baby in the womb is truly a baby in the womb. It's not just a blob of tissue. And I think more and more so the culture is understanding that.
Now, and speaking of technology, I know you all are getting ready to roll out your Option Ultrasound program. Talk about that.
Yeah, it's a great program. It's actually been happening for about 14 years. We're going to up the game, so to speak, and put more machines around the country. But we've already placed about 800 machines around the country. It's resulted in over 425,000 babies being saved. And our goal is 1 million alive in 2025. And that's what we're going to try to do.
So, you know, when people see these ultrasounds, they have a change of heart. Talk about just the psychology of that and how it really changes. It can be a 180 for someone who who has this.
Yeah, the numbers, they're, anywhere from 60 to 70% of an abortion-minded woman, when she receives counseling and sees the ultrasound, actually uses that technology to see the baby in the womb, often sucking its thumb or waving its arms. She has a change of heart. 60 to 70% of the women that go in for an abortion. If they see the ultrasound, they will say, wait a minute, I don't want to do this. And I think that's all about information. And I think that's the difference between the pro-life movement and the pro-abortion movement. We're more than willing to show a woman what is happening in her body. Planned Parenthood and other clinics typically will try to prevent her from seeing that shot.
And abortions in recent years, the number is down. Talk about just in the context of history, where does the pro-life movement and the abortion issue stand right now today?
Well, the difficulty, so often we're looking at the numbers, staggering. 55 million children have been taken through abortion. It's the greatest catastrophic loss of human life in history. 55 million, it tops wars and combinations of wars. So when you look at it from that perspective, that's the heavy-heartedness that the pro-life movement has, is how many children have died through abortion. And yet the numbers are down. Our concern is it may be down because of the morning after pill and other pharmaceuticals now that are being used after a woman realizes she's pregnant. She can take pharmaceuticals in order to terminate the pregnancy. The great news is that there's also a pill that can reverse that. Once a woman, if she regrets taking it, if it's within a certain amount of time, she can reverse the effects of those abortifacient pills. So my point, and I think the pro-life movement's point, is we need to understand that all life is created in God's image. We're all God's creatures, and we need to protect them at the border as well as here in the womb of a mom.
Wow. Jim Daly with Focus on the Family, thanks so much.
Good to be with you.
Do you support the president? Do you support Trump's tax plan? Are you concerned it will affect your retirement income in a post-Trump era? Help protect your financial future and call Annuity General for your complimentary book. From a leading financial firm that shows you ways to not run out of money, whether the market goes up or down. This free book reveals little-known secrets about annuity strategies in simple-to-understand terms that can protect your money for a lifetime. As a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report summarizing the rates and benefits of annuities from hundreds of top-rated insurers, helping you find ways to get up to 33% more income in retirement. Invaluable advice for an uncertain age. That's right, 2 books both absolutely free for calling Annuity General. Help protect your financial future.
Call 800-216-0342. That's 800-216-0342. Call now.
Attention! If you currently do not get health insurance through your employer, or if you do not have health insurance, or if you just got divorced or married, had a baby, moved, or lost your health insurance coverage, listen closely. You are eligible for a new health care plan using Health Insurance America. A family of 4 can make up to $97,000 a year and still qualify for a new health care plan. Get coverage for doctor visits, prescriptions, hospital, dental, and vision for as little as $25 a week with copays as low as $0. Health insurance rates have nearly doubled in the last 3 years. Stop paying the rising cost of traditional major medical and learn how Health Insurance America is saving people thousands of dollars a year on their health care plans. Don't waste hours on the phone or on a government website. Talk to a live health care consultant right now.
Call 1-800-940-5020. That's 1-800-940-5020. 1-800-940-5020.
More and more excavations in Israel are validating the Bible. As Chris Mitchell reports, one dig is uncovering one of the Old Testament's most important sites.
You're looking at the heart of biblical Israel, along the route known as the Way of the Patriarchs. This is ancient Shiloh, the place where the Bible says Joshua divided the promised land between the 12 tribes, and where the tabernacle of the Lord stood for more than 300 years.
Welcome to ancient Shiloh. This is the first capital of ancient Israel, and it's a sacred spot because the Mishkan was here, the tabernacle where people came to connect with God.
Scott Stripling directs the excavation here, and along with dozens of volunteers, they're digging into history.
we're dealing with real people, real places, real events. This is not mythology. The coins that we excavated today, we're talking about coins of Herod the Great, Pontius Pilate, Festus, Felix, Agrippa I, Agrippa II. The Bible talks about these people. We've got the image right there.
That image includes a fortified wall built by the Canaanites. They're finding a treasure trove of artifacts, including coins and 2,000 pieces of pottery a day.
Now this one was from yesterday. It's been washed already, so you see the same form right out of the ground and yesterday, and these are those handles from the stone vessels. Remember Jesus' first miracle at Cana, they were stone jars full of water. That's that ritual purity culture of the first century.
An archaeologist looks at these shards as a fine timepiece.
Just like your great-grandmother's pottery is different from your pottery that you're using today, and once we learn the pottery, then we can use it as our primary means of dating.
Stripling says literally digging into the Bible can change your life.
You can read the Bible, you can walk the Bible, but the ultimate is to dig the Bible. You know, when we actually get into the soil, like these students from Lee University, they're literally, it's under their fingernails and in their nose and their mouth and their ears, and they're exposing this ancient culture. It becomes one with you, and sort of like we came out of the soil, and as we dig into this soil, we connect with God and with each other, I think, in a very important way.
I love getting my hands dirty. I love digging in the dirt. It's my favorite thing.
People from all ages man the dig, with the main drivers being students like Abigail.
It's tiring and exhausting, but it's really rewarding. It's exciting to find ancient things that have been laying in the dirt just waiting for us for thousands of years.
She says the Bible comes alive in the dirt.
I read the Bible totally differently than I did before I came here, and when I read the Bible, I know the places, I know what's going on, I understand it more deeply, especially where previous archaeologists have claimed that the archaeology disproves the Bible, but when we dig here, we find that everything matches. You read it in the Bible, you dig in the dirt, and there it is.
Archaeology doesn't set out to prove or disprove the Bible. What we want to do is to illuminate the biblical text, the background of the text. So to set it in a real-world culture, to what we call verisimilitude. So we get an ancient literary description. Now we have a material culture that matches that. Chris, you're sitting where Samuel and Eli and Hannah and these people that we have read about, they came just like us, needing answers, needing to connect with God, needing forgiveness.
He says they dig into the past and find lessons for the present.
One of the faith lessons for us is that God is the potter and we're the clay. And even if our lives are broken, like these vessels are, God told Jeremiah, after he told him to go to Shiloh and see what he had done, he told him to go to the potter's house and look at a flawed vessel and see how the potter puts it back on the wheel and works out the imperfections. So my faith lesson is this, that yes, we're imperfect, but if we'll allow God, he wants to put us on his potter's wheel and he wants to make us a vessel of honor.
Stripling often cites Psalm 102 that says, "O Zion, your servants take delight in its stones and favor its dust."
Ultimately, Chris, if the Bible is true, then the God of the Bible has a moral claim on our lives. And as we establish the veracity of the biblical text, I hope that everyone watching will just think about that God loves us and he has a moral claim on our lives.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Shiloh, Biblical Samaria.
And that is going to do it for Faith Nation tonight. Thanks for joining us and have a great evening.